What's up, everyone? It is the aftermath from Patriots loss to the Buffalo Bills. 24-10 was the final. Didn't feel that close. You know that. Am I surprised they lost? Are you surprised? No. Are you surprised in the way that they lost? Unprepared, mistake-laden, penalties, clock management issues, afraid of their own shadow? No. And that's what's the most alarming. The Patriots had an exam. Their biggest exam since last January, the one that would mark how much progress they had made in the 11 months since they lost to the Bills in the playoffs. And they weren't ready for the exam. They weren't ready for the exam from the first third down play they ran when their quarterback, the guy who I look to as their best leader right now on the offensive side of the ball, Mac Jones, he misread a play, resulted in a fumble and a conversion missed. And from there, I'll just run through them real quick. The mistakes that followed included another fumble by Ramondre Stevenson, fortunately recovered by the Patriots, a sequence in which Miles Bryant failed to touch down Isaiah McKenzie after a reception, and then Jonathan Jones gave up on a play where he felt that Josh Allen was about to step out of bounds. Gabe Davis turned around, turned that into a touchdown. Patriots also had a sequence where they took a penalty on a kickoff return, followed by a cut block gone bad that led to an intentional grounding, while at the same time there was a Cole Strange hold going on. Following that, when the Patriots did get a little run to give themselves some room and punt to the Bills, they had to delay a game before that punt. Of course, Buffalo did score on that drive. Saw end of half mismanagement, timidity. And that, I think, is what's the most alarming. The Patriots are afraid of their own shadow, afraid to make mistakes, yet they still make them. And before I bring in Phil, I just want to, this observation, see if you agree with it or not. The Patriots' approach seems to lack urgency. And it has throughout this season, from the lack of urgency to find somebody to replace Josh McDaniels, a suitable replacement, to the lack of urgency to install an offense that would have the team hit the ground running. And Bill expressed that during training camp. Hey, don't get your hopes up. It might take a while. And it has. To a lack of urgency where these mistakes that we see, whether it's Pierre Strong running into a kicker or the plethora of penalties or the picks or the turnovers or the ineptitude on third down or in the red zone or even getting to the red zone. It's just not the urgency that you remember. There's just not the urgency of a good team. The Patriots are Pantherian. They're Jaguaresque. That's the level of football that New England Patriots fans are being asked to digest right now. And we're all sitting out there like Charlie Brown in the pumpkin patch, waiting on the great pumpkin to return, that they're going to play like they previously did, on their detail, situationally genius, and making sure the other team's the one that's afraid of its own shadow. This, hey, we'll get it eventually approach, heading to week 14, including the bye. Haven't gotten it yet. And now I think the players are starting to get a little agitated. Let's get Phil in here because he was boots on the ground after the game. We'll talk to Phil about just where the mindset of the players seems to be in his eyes firsthand. Phil, what's the mood among the players right now? I mean, the frustration level seems high. And the urgency that players are pleading for and aggressiveness doesn't seem soon in coming.
No, it doesn't. And that's why when I left the locker room last night, right after the game, the word that came to mind for me was exasperation, because I think we're beyond frustration now. I think frustration has been there really since training camp. But now we're hearing things from players, very open players with multiple microphones, cell phones being used as recorders, cameras in their faces, really allowing us to feel what they're feeling. And especially with this game in particular, Tom, where we're so soon after it, they didn't like the plan. And I think it goes beyond that. They didn't like the plan. They didn't feel as though the plan was adjusted quickly enough. And Mac Jones obviously provided us, a memeable video to sort of give voice to that in-game frustration. But for players after the game to tell me, Devontae Parker to tell me that it was frustrating not to throw the ball farther down the field, that they get a spark when they go to the deep ball, no matter who it is, whether it's him or somebody else. And that can be the driver for their offense, and that it has been the driver for their offense at times this year. And he's right. For him to be open with his frustration, for Kendrick Bourne to say that, they can't attack with 5-yard throws and moving slow, and that they need to be more aggressive, especially coming out of halftime. That to me is an indication of, hey, our plan was what it was going into the game, and that's fine. But when it's not working and we don't adjust and we're down against one of the best offenses in football, we need more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is what led to some of the feelings we heard in the locker room last night.
Bill Belichick was asked directly about the frustration level of his players. Here's what he had to say, and we'll follow it up with some of the players expressing what Bill is wondering about.
Do you think it's hard to keep players from getting frustrated against an offense like Buffalo when you're not incredibly aggressive through the air?
What players are you talking about?
Your offensive players.
I don't know. You'd have to ask them that.
I mean, we got to get the ball downfield, so I think Mac needs more time. He's obviously running around, so it's hard to get the ball downfield when you can't really have time for him to throw. No knock to the line. It's just what we need to work on. The receivers can't do nothing if the ball can't get downfield. We can't throw it past 5 yards. It's just going to be a long game.
Phil, you alluded to Mac's agitation on the sideline that he expressed with expletives. Loved it. It's great. And I loved his post-game honesty. But Mac doesn't really coast in this either, because the problem began, or the problems, or the lack of attention to detail began on the first third down of the game. Here's Mac Jones talking about that 3rd and 1 after they got themselves in a situation where they could have maybe cobbled together a drive against the best team in their division. And here's what he said happened.
Wanted to ask you about two things in the game. The first 3rd and 1 handoff there, sort of what led to that breakdown, and then the 2-minute there with the run play, timeout, the sneak, and the timeout, just like managing that.
Yeah, I think the first one's my fault. I can't let that happen. Something we talked about on the sideline, and I didn't do the right thing, so that's on me. It's a big play in the game. Once again, that kind of goes back into getting into the flow. And Mondre gets that, I give it to him the right way, and he'll make a play, and then we can kind of move on and create a drive, So that was on me.
Mac Jones shouldering some of the blame for that play, as he should, as you mentioned, Tom. But this comes back to me, in some ways, coaching as well, because that's the first drive of the game. That is your opening script. That's your first 3rd down of the game. Mm-hmm. It's a 3rd and short. You've got your 3rd and mediums, your 3rd and longs, your 3rd and shorts. Castle's told us all about this sort of preparation stuff that gets worked on during the week. And it looked like they didn't know what to do. So it's on Mac. Yes, he's the one with the ball in his hands. He has to make sure that looks better than it did. But do they not rep it enough? Is there not enough preparation? Because again, that's something that Kendrick Bourne alluded to last night as well. He said, especially in 3rd down, which is what I asked him about. They go 3 for 10 on 3rd down last week. They go 3 for 12 on 3rd down this week. I said, does there need to be drastic changes made in that all-important area of your offense? And he said, we need to know what the defense is doing on 3rd down. We know what we want to do, but it seems like every time we have something planned, they have something ready for us, and we need to flip that. That, to me, again, it comes back to preparation, Tom. And so individual errors across the board, no doubt. Penalties, bad throws. But I still come back to where it all starts, because I think there is a lack of attention to detail. I know there is, based on some of the conversations I had with players last night.
And that, to me, is one of the biggest, what's most damning about this. And I talked at the top here about a lack of urgency from the Patriots that has been shown. A lack of urgency in terms of replacing Josh McDaniels and kind of frittering away a year of Mac Jones with a revamped offense and a coordinator who seems like a placeholder. And this lack of urgency might extend to the attention to detail. That's an aside, if you have a thought on that. But I also wonder, that was supposed to be one of the advantages that a defensive mind brought to your offense. He's going to know what they're thinking. He knows how a defense thinks. Well, but he doesn't know the chess piece that an offensive coach might be. He can think like a defensive coach, but he has to then learn on the job with a highly public team, visible team, how to get to the next chess move. And he's not able to do that yet, Phil. So urgency first and lack thereof. We had spirited conversations in the offseason about whether or not this was a rebuilding year. And to the coaching staff, I think it is. I don't think it is to the players, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I just look at that game last night, and if you're a defensive-minded individual looking at what you have offensively, I think that tells you why the Patriots got to where they got for that plan coming into the game. He looks at their offensive line, and he says, Trent Brown's sick. We're going to have to start Connor McDermott, who we just pulled off the Jets practice squad. If we ask Mac Jones to drop back and throw it down the field as much as guys like Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne may want to, we're going to get our quarterback killed, and we might lose him for another month. We already been through that this season. We're not looking to do that again. So let's use the quick game. But then where does it go from there? Because the quick game stuff was the stuff that I think the Bills were sitting on after the first, 20 minutes of the game. Less than that, probably, because it doesn't look all that imaginative. Even the RPO throw to Marcus Jones, imaginative to get him on the field and to use him. Sure, I'll give you credit for that. But that's the same bubble screen off an RPO that we've been seeing for the last month or so. And it's really the only variation of the RPO, maybe barring a couple of other brief examples, that we've seen this year. So there's a lack of creativity. There's a lack of urgency in terms of the attack. I think it starts with the offensive line, which Matt Patricia is also in charge of, along with the play calling. But I think there's more you can do when working around a bad offensive line. We've seen it happen before. This is a new challenge for this offensive coaching staff, though.
And I think Bill Belichick has run for cover a number of times this year with excuse making, whether it be on injuries or coming up with caveats to things that are smoking gun evidence of things not working. Hey, penalties, Bill? Yeah, but we didn't have one last week, and the defense doesn't get a lot. Or, hey, we had the yardage edge. Or, wow, hey, we were in Vegas and really looked bad in the preseason game, but we were kick-ass on Wednesday, when they weren't even that. I think in this instance, we would look at that and to press Bill on it, which is impossible to do in a press conference setting or even individually, but to press Bill on it, he would say, what are we supposed to do? We got Connor McDermott out there and we got a sick Trent Brown. What are we supposed to do? When we did some of our exercises in the offseason about 5 questions to answer and, 9-point plan to fix the Patriots, I remember writing about the tackles. And I wrote about the tackles because Isaiah Wynn had been so inconsistent last year and was so frequently injured. And the same thing with Trent Brown, who had played 9 games. And I wondered if the tackles would hold up. And the Patriots ignored the tackle position. Not just ignored it, but rewarded Isaiah Wynn with a $10 million contract. So when he reaches for that handy excuse of, what do you want? Better planning. If you have a drop back quarterback in 2022, you better be able to make sure your offensive line stands up. And don't say, we don't need Shaq Mason and we don't need Joe Tooney. Again, I'm going too far back with that, but they've had the players in place. Or we don't need Ted Karras. So it's hard to look at the decisions made and not link them to the performance that Bill will then use to say, what are we supposed to do? But the Patriots now are afraid of themselves, or the coaching staff is afraid of itself. There's this fine line of not beating yourself and also not playing to lose to the point where you're scared. And I look at the Mac no pick edict, which definitely was passed down after Chicago. The Baltimore Ravens Mac, he has been buried under a field of rocks. There's a no pick edict, and there's also a white flag edict where Bill will now just, what are we going to do? What are we supposed to do there? Trying to get Mac hurt. Your feeling on that?
Well, I had a player tell me last night that he felt the offensive plan was timid, quote unquote. And that, to your point, it felt like the plays being called were just not to turn it over, which obviously isn't enough in today's game. And I understand the other side of that. I understand probably Bill Belichick's point of view on that, which is, but when we do turn it over, we lose. So as long as we don't turn it over, we're giving ourselves a chance to win. There's a sliding scale there. You have to be relatively aggressive in 2022, especially against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, to be able to put out a competitive product and do anything in this league. So if you're just sitting back and you're waiting for the other guy to make a mistake when the other guy's an alien and he's throwing to an alien on the other side, which is going to happen to you 4 or so more times the rest of the season, it's not enough. You just can't win consistently enough in today's game that way. And so that's why I think players, again, the frustration was just ratcheted to another level because they're not dumb. They're sitting there on their sideline. They're looking across the field. They're seeing Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and the second best scoring offense in the NFL. And they're seeing themselves, according to Next Gen Stats, throw it on average 6 yards past the line of scrimmage, throw for throw, which extrapolated over the course of an entire season would put Mac Jones as 32 out of 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats, in terms of his distance on his passes. So that's where the frustration lies. It's just not a modern approach.
And it's not a modern approach. And I think what is also jarring to fans who stayed for the end of the game is to watch a 3rd and 15 turn into a 4th and 6, maybe after a completion to Jacoby Myers with 12 minutes left and a 17-point game and a punt. I mean, if you have covered or followed the Patriots all these years, you understand that Bill Belichick's ability to read a game and say, okay, when are we going to get the ball back here? And what will the score be when we get it back? Now, the Patriots did get it back fairly quickly in that instance. They did stop Buffalo and get a punt. But you're down 17 and you've shown no aptitude to get it deep into Bill's territory. To punt there is head scratching. Also the timidity at halftime, the play calling there. But I also found the way the Patriots approached the end of the game as exceedingly compliant. Here's Bill Belichick talking about Buffalo's last possession and what went into the decision to not call timeouts to get the ball back for one last effort to try and cut a 2-score game into a bizarro tie.
I thought that was the best thing to do for our team. You know, we went the other way in the Baltimore game, lost Mac for 3 weeks. I mean, I don't really think that was worth it.
Well, on one hand, at least Bill was saying, look, we don't want to see Bailey Zappi out here again. We got Mac hurt against Baltimore trying to do that same stuff. So you get some more, at least a smoking gun on where he feels about Mac Jones. But Bill said it just wasn't worth it. Didn't think it was worth it. There's a lot of stuff that he seems to say more frequently, not outwardly, but inwardly. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
I'd come back to the defensive plan, Tom, because it is, I go back and forth on it, honestly, a little bit. To allow 24 points to Josh Allen and that offense is below their season average. It's not bad, especially when you almost get doubled up in terms of time of possession. I think a lot of defensive coaches out there would tell you if that's the case week to week, you really don't have a chance. And by being patient with Josh Allen, it looked like, Tom, they just wanted to flood the field with defensive backs, force them to run the football. I thought they still did a pretty good job at stopping the run. Credit to the Patriots defensive line. Devon Godchaux, I thought, had a great game. I think he ended up with 10 tackles, their leading tackler. So I don't necessarily disagree with the defensive plan because they did turn over Josh Allen once. They almost turned him over again. And if Kyle Duggar actually is able to hold on to that near interception, I think it was in the second quarter of that game, right before the strip sack, then maybe it's a little different game. Maybe the Patriots are able to put up some points after that play and the whole thing changes. And Bill Belichick says, well, that's why our game plan is our game plan. We're not going to screw it up. They are, especially Josh Allen, who's a little bit more prone to making mistakes of late. But when your offense is as abysmal as theirs is at the moment, I think you do have to roll the dice a little bit more and take a few more chances. Because if you don't, you're looking at what we looked at, and you mentioned that last drive of the game, 17 plays. It took them 17 plays. They went 57 yards, and they basically killed clock at the end of the game. That's just that was their offense in a nutshell right there.
And Phil, you talk about the way the offense approaches things and their lack of aggressiveness and urgency. It was telling, and I thought Mac Jones was interesting in the post game at least. He had a better post game than a regular game, but he wants to be pushed hard. They're asking and pleading for, give us the whip. Here's Mac.
Yeah, I think it's accountability. It starts with me, and I think I want to be coached harder. I want to be a better player, and the coaches have given us everything they've got, and they've done everything to put us in position to win. But I want to hold everybody accountable, including myself. So I think that's, it's tough, right? You get called out a little bit, or you have to admit that you didn't do your job. I mean, that's part of the game, and a lot of that blame falls on me. I didn't do my best tonight.
Do the Patriots, Phil, have enough coaches? Forget the experience level. Do they have enough of them?
It's a good question. I was thinking about this a little bit during the game last night because we were thinking about the Josh McDaniels era and how a lot of times Josh McDaniels had an assistant quarterbacks coach. He was quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for years. We know that. But whether it was Bo Hardigree or Jerry Shaplinski, there was always sort of a number two. And maybe that coach was oftentimes just working with young quarterbacks to sort of develop them in the system, because you had Tom Brady, who was, PhD level Patriots offense knowledge beyond that. And then you would have somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett, who would need a hand just sort of coming up in the system. But maybe that's something the Patriots are lacking right now. I think they get some help, obviously, from Matt Patricia, from Joe Judge, Evan Rothstein, Bill Belichick. They're all involved with what Mac Jones is going through right now. But maybe there is just a lack of bodies that contributes to that overall offensive knowledge.
It's not a murderer's row of offensive coaches. It's just not. I mean, Joe Judge is a special teams coach. Matt has a degree in defense. Bill can coach anywhere. He's the best he's ever been, but he divvies his time up. Billy Yates is assisted by Matt Patricia to do the offensive line. It's not Dante Scarnecchia. A running backs coach, he's turned over. It was Ivan Fears forever. Running backs, the least of their problems. But I just feel like sometimes they don't have enough people. If you have Matt double timing, go ahead, Phil.
I want to follow up with something that you said earlier in the show, which was it feels like Matt Patricia is a placeholder as play caller or de facto offensive coordinator. Is that to you just based on performance, which obviously that makes a lot of sense? But to me, I think this is a long-term plan from Bill Belichick to say, I ain't my offensive coordinator every 2 years. Josh McDaniels, we were lucky we had him for a long time, but I'm not bringing in Bill O'Brien just to lose him to be a head coach somewhere else in 2023. I'm not elevating Nick Caley to go and be an offensive coordinator or a head coach somewhere else in a year or two. So I think this plan is his way of building long-term continuity. And that's what I would expect I hadn't thought of that. Be the case here moving forward.
I hadn't thought of that because it's been so it's such an abject disaster so far that you almost can't run it back with that. But if the belief of Bill is, we went 5-11 in 2000 and won the Super Bowl the next year, we do have seismic shifts in the way guys perform. Maybe that's what he's counting on here. But it's getting harder and harder, and will be harder and harder to sell that to ownership, which certainly gave Bill the latitude to make any decision he wanted with the coaching staff. But the on-field results argue strenuously that it ain't working with Matt, and we're not going to sit here and watch the Buffalo Bills and Chicago Bears take mercy knees at the end of the game in our stadium when we're trying to build a new one out here. I mean, we got additions here. We can't be watching that, Bill. Phil, the Patriots are 12 games into the season. They'll next play on December 11th. Are they what they are at this point, or can they be better and close the season in a way they didn't in 19, 20, or 21? Can they drastically change who they've been?
I really don't think so, Tom, unless there is some kind of drastic change personnel-wise, because I'm not sure things are going to drastically change schematically in terms of the creativity or the imagination shown on that front. But where do they get better personnel-wise? I have to look up front in the offensive line. Trent Brown will get healthier, so maybe you get a better performance from him than maybe you saw the last couple of weeks. But you're looking at Yadi Kajust coming back, being your season savior, or Isaiah Wynn coming back, being your season savior. I don't see it right now. I think they're too far behind, and especially when you look at the schedule, Tom, to have to see the Bills again, the Bengals, and the Dolphins, all top 6 offenses in the league right now. I don't know how you hang with them. And to me, you have to beat one of those teams. You have to steal a game from one of those teams in order to even be sniffing the postseason.
Can't they at least be smarter? I mean, I was dumbstruck that Jonathan Jones gave up on a play last night. I was not as dumbstruck that Devontae Parker was cruising around near the cameras while Mac Jones was throwing to him in the end zone. Same, I was somewhat, but not completely dumbstruck that Nelson Aguilar seemed to give up on a play last week, and then the ball was thrown to him on a 4th down. Can they just be more attentive? I mean, the Miles Bryant thing was also bizarro, where you just waited for the guy to get up and then started wrestling with him. I couldn't believe it.
That was one where I wonder if that was a coaching point during the year. If they felt like Isaiah McKenzie, for some reason, was loose with the football, and they said, hey, if this guy's down, he's not going to be paying attention when he gets up. You're going to want to try to punch that thing out, because that
seems really obscure.
It's so strange, though. Like, why else would you do that unless you were explicitly told to do it? You know what I mean? I mean, he knows it's not the college game. He knew that that the guy wasn't down. He's clearly waiting to try to punch the thing out. Why? Just another questionable moment and a long list of them last night. And to answer your question, can they get smarter based on the litany of moments that we have at our disposal now going back 12 weeks? I would say probably not, Tom. They are not, by their definition, a smart team in terms of avoiding penalties, avoiding negative plays, avoiding these hiccups week after week after week. Until we stop seeing them, I think it's hard to predict that we will stop seeing them.
Or managing clock. Or their approach. It's just, you're right, all of it. So they'll head to Arizona and Vegas. They'll play December 11th against Arizona there. That's a team in severe disarray. And then they'll have Vegas. If they can take care of business against those teams, they're 8-6. Does that wash away what happened against the Buffalo Bills and make folks, or you, more importantly, I don't think we care about what folks think because folks aren't sitting here on the pod. Does it make you feel as if the Patriots will be corner turning?
We love the folks. You love the folks.
No, I do. But I mean, how can I'm not asking you to channel the 71,000 listeners who are on here every week. I'm just asking, I should be asking about you. What do the folks think? They think there's hope. That's why there's 71,000 listeners.
It does not erase what happened against the Bills, because that is the team against which you are judged. And to me, that has to be one of the most disheartening parts of last night, why that locker room was exasperated, in my opinion. That's the team you've been building for. That's the team you know you have to beat. And that's a team that you have not gained any ground on from last year. I'm sorry, I know the score was closer. I know you made them punt. That's all well and good. So the formula was a little different. It was packaged a little bit differently, but the message after last night is still the same. The Bills and the Patriots are not in the same class. And so that to me is disheartening. And until you prove otherwise, that's how you have to feel about this team moving forward, even if they get wins against the Raiders and Cardinals.
Phil, I think in closing, it is important to point out after this game that Josh Uche played pretty well. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Phil, any last words? That'll do.